Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Trying to make sure we got a good angle here. Looking good. Looking fine. Right. So first up, we have a new upgrade to add to the game. I was trying to add an upgrade to Officer Todd, courtesy of Balethal, but we're still getting there. Pretty sure I just saw... yeah. We're gonna grab these and move them into the actual backup folder. So this looks like... fix that. Oops. God damn it. Todd damn it. Dad dot it. I'm pretty sure the game hook stuff is still not fixed up, believe it or not. This I have backed up elsewhere, so... not so worried about that. What? What are you complaining about? Alright, let's fire this up. And I'm just going to do a quick check of the two different game hooks files, because I never did update it, so I don't know if iQuery was already using his Shaman update or not. But I think there's like a certain amount. There's a buff to the AoE area of effect. That's what AoE stands for. There's a buff to like the range of the Shaman. I see a definition of distance, but I don't see it being called here anywhere. I wonder what's up with that subunit thing. I see distance calls down here for when we had different health values restored based on proximity. I do not see... What the fuck? Well... No, I have no idea. Where the fuck would it be? That I'm not seeing it immediately. It looks like this is just left over and not used at all. But then how do we... What's up, UED? Maybe the... Oh, maybe it's right here. Yeah, this is the unit finder. And it looks like they're identical. Okay, so we should be good. Which means I should also be good to delete that. All that's left now is to add the new plugins. The newly, freshly minted plugins. The EXE red here. Also, I don't know if you were trying to say northern clans in your post, but I'm pretty sure you wrote northen without the second R. Just saying. Wow, that's been a problem for that long, by the way. Alright. Uh... I guess it should probably be like infantry armor or something as the placeholder. Crow-actorate. I don't think about it. There's never going to be a reason for me to go back to remastered, so while I'm sure it's great for you guys to have one tiny additional advantage over in that platform, it's not going to impact me in the slightest. I also think it's probably just going to be abused by most people instead of used to, like, in a very small way to accentuate certain thematics. Most people are probably just going to go way far overboard with it, which is what you see with lighting effects pretty much all the time, regardless of what they are or what the environment is. So that doesn't really come as a surprise, but it, now that you've asked me what I think about it, yeah. Sort of the, one of my first thoughts. Alright. I do need to go find the button set stuff because I need to... What is this? Oh, I do actually have adrenaline packs, but the icon ID is different now. Okay. Alright, so that should be good. I can't remember if there was some other button or whatever that I needed to take a look at. I should also double check to make sure that the I gotta really standardize whether or not I'm gonna be using full stops at the end.
We long for combat.
It's not quite the right sound set there.
State the nature of your medical emergency.
Call the shot.
Need medical attention. I'm on the job. Need medical attention.
Alright. Cool. So I then need to... Adrenaline packs is good. All this other stuff seems good. I can't believe Medic Mana wasn't available for that dumb reason. Alright. I was also thinking there was probably some change I was supposed to make in the TBL file, but I don't remember it. I do know that I've got duplicated Caduceus reactor upgrades here. The label is 1275. $48. Which corresponds with... Oh yeah, I have to recompile that. That's overcharge. I'm just adding the upgrade adrenaline packs. It'll be available from the first mission. Oh wait, no, never mind. I don't need that. Also, hello, welcome. Oops. All right, let's take a look. Let's see what we got here.
State the nature of your medical emergency.
Upgrade complete.
Call the shot. Fire it up.
Well, hold on. This unit's got 0 armor. He takes 10 damage, right?
Outstanding. Finally.
State the nature of your medical emergency.
Does not appear to be working. Oh, you know what is the reason? I forgot to enable a certain hook. iCore told me I needed to enable medic orders. I probably would have remembered that if I hadn't... What the fuck? No, you dummy. There we go. But yeah, I probably would have remembered that if I didn't also make like 10,000 other small changes. Okay, so let's do that.
Ghost report. Standing by.
Upgrade
Need
complete.
medical attention?
Standing by. Rock and roll. Ghost report. Commander. Rock and roll. Call the shot. I hear that. Standing by.
Need medical attention?
Ghost report.
Need medical attention?
Commander.
Still doesn't appear to be working. Let me double check that I have everything enabled that he needed me to have enabled. Armor bonus is enabled. And weapon damage, yeah. What's up, Alexander? I'm actually not sure about the tests. I don't think so. I'm going to spend most of today working on AI so that we have a general AI to work with, sort of like a melee style AI that I can just plug into any map. So I actually have, I've made a decision around this idea. I really want to explore the idea of generic AI, melee style AI, if you will, that can sort of adapt to any circumstance. At least any map from, you know, assuming it's building from humble beginnings. So the main idea is I would provide a situation where you've got like what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write a generic Terran AI. This is Hydra Terran. That's what this is called. And then from there, I'm going to make a copy of that for every single AI personality I intend to have. So Raynor, the Magistrate, Duke, maybe Mengsk later, Kerrigan, all the Confederates, etc., etc., etc. And I'll specialize them based on those personalities. So how fast they expand, what their attack patterns are, what their tech path looks like, etc. Now from there, I will take each individual map and I'll further specialize that personality's script. But I'll always be working from the same foundations. The idea being, I'll always have an AI that has the very similar personalities from the start, where most of the AI is already done, and all I have to do is like base layouts, maybe some staging stuff, and other specific things. That to me makes sense. That to me is like probably the best way that I could go about writing AI, and then I have a basis from which to draw the AI for all other maps. Like every single project that I work on from now that uses the Hydra game state anyway will be able to use the Terran Hydra base. And then, or maybe there's like a personality that I know is similar to what I'm trying to get at. And so I use that or something. I could see that happening too. So there's all sorts of different ways that this can help me out. So I hope that will be a very exciting time. I can probably do an AI's... I can probably place and record all of the AI's base layouts for any given map in around an hour. Telling them to then going into their add build threads and specializing those for each base takes probably... I would say maybe a half hour. A conservative estimate that gives me a lot of leeway to get distracted or to do a tough job, tougher than maybe what I am initially expecting. I would put it at about like 2 hours per AI per map kind of deal. So once I write the basis of each AI, in theory, in a 4-hour mod stream, I could finalize 2 AI every stream. Once I have these bases, like the bases with which to work with, you know what I mean? So in a map like this where there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 AI, then it would take me 3.5 streams to finish the AI for the entire map. In theory, assuming we're going off of 4-hour mod streams, I think I'll be able to work faster than that. But even then, that's less than a week to finish a map. In terms of its AI, to finish a map's AI, once I have all of the baseline stuff done. So that's going to take a bit longer, obviously. I don't know that we'll even be able to finish the Terran basic AI right now. I think we will be able to on this stream, and then maybe get started on the Zerg, since those are the 2 we need for this map. But the basic AI is one that I can always go back to and provide different build threads and a bunch of different mutations, right? So that's why I want to make sure I'm putting in some care for stuff like that and trying to conceptualize what we need and figure out like what would be best and all that stuff. So it will be interesting for sure. But anyway, even at the end of today, if we only have, the Terran AI, that still, in theory, could account for 4 of the players, even if they're not specialized to each individual personality that I'm going for. We would have something to fill the slots for the 2 Confederates and the 2 good guys, if you will. So it's pretty crazy just by itself, I think. Let me just double check that this isn't working, in case it was still compiling when I was fucking around. But I think it would have been removed. It just wouldn't have been available.
Upgrade complete.
Where does it hurt?
You got my attention.
Where does it hurt?
Ghost report in mind. Finally. Jacked up and good to go.
Where does it hurt?
Give me something to shoot. Let's move. Yes. Checked up and good to go.
No. I'm not seeing anything here.
Where does it hurt?
We know that the upgrade is researched because, like, it's the proper ID because it matches up with that. Do I already have a shaman? Oh, I do.
Unit item. Command archive.
State the nature of your medical
Terran
emergency.
Call the shot. Standing by. I'm here. Standing by. Call the shot. Standing by. Go, go, go. Checked up and good to go.
Oh, it seems to work with this.
Go, go, go. Call the shot. Give me something to shoot.
Aha. That's weird. You had a hard time deconstructing the existing modern scripts. Oh. Well, the existing modern scripts for my stuff are definitely out there. So I'll give you a walkthrough real quick of this is actually less complicated. This generic Terran one right now is less complicated than the default. Also, space ramp. Remember when I said I was gonna just punch ramps out of you? Well, now you're shitting them out with that face. Alright, so I was also thinking of what map I would be working on next, and if DF is going to send me space ramps, I guess that means I'm working on V Zergo too. Why not? Darkened Confederate. True, actually. You sharpened pencils. So, at first we just have a bunch of header commands, right, Alexander? These are fairly straightforward. They control certain sometimes simple, sometimes very expansive functions. Default min, for example, tells the AI to try and set up defenses, like staff each town region with defenders, like guards and stuff. So I call this because I kind of wanted to automate what's the term? Like before I had guards as their own thread and I would manually request them, similar to base layouts. It was super time consuming for units because I always had so many. And half the time they wouldn't even use the units even when they did get them. So they would just sit there and do nothing. And it was a little too much like Starcraft 2 for my liking at that point. With default min 1, or default min 1, we end up having a situation where the AI will try to shuffle its defenders to wherever its base is expanding. So expansions, but also if it's starting to build like bunkers or depots or production structures away from where it currently has structures, it will shuffle some defenders over there to sort of like oversee the construction. So it's prioritizing, in a way, newer regions for it. So that's why we call that, for example. But that's just one example of all of these different headers that tell the AI to do certain things. The default ones, like default min and default build off, are a little bit more difficult to explain off the top of my head, but you can always go back to the reference sheet and check out the particulars from what we understand them right now. I'm sure there's some incomplete information there, right? Farms timing and under attack. Well, farms timing is a vanilla command. Under attack is just telling the AI that it can still spend money while it's defending. Basically, it's a new command. AI controls are like basically flags. Like don't build gas tells the AI to not build gas unless it's specifically requested in the AI script. Like unless I write build one refinery, the AI won't build the gas. This is mostly useful to tell the AI to not build like gas out of its build order. When it actually needs to conserve minerals for useful things, it doesn't make any sense for it to throw down a refinery in the early game. So that's why we do that. Unit mover and don't focus disabled. Unit mover is really useful. It tells the AI to ignore its own and its allies' units when trying to build stuff. They just get decollided and moved out of the way when a building goes down. Pretty useful. Otherwise, the AI would get stuck a lot, especially when you combine that with base layouts that might be in specific situations that are close to a lot of action. Enemy units should still stop the unit mover, so you got to keep that in mind if it's like an AI that might get rushed or something. But I mean, you should always have this enabled. Pretty much, there's no instance where you wouldn't want this enabled. Don't focus disabled is a way where I don't know if you've ever observed it, but if an AI uses Maelstrom or Lockdown, or anybody uses Maelstrom or Lockdown on a set of units, all AI units generally rush at that unit. Like all of them in a wide area will rush down at the disabled unit. This just tells them to not focus that. It cuts out that behavior because it's dumb, and you generally don't want the AI to send its entire army at something like that in that manner. What do you mean, DF? It means that they don't focus units that are locked down in the same way. There's also a command AI control called no retaliation, which tells the AI to not, you know how like if you attack a ghost with a mechanical unit, the ghost will lock that unit down. It basically cuts out that behavior. If you're going to manually micromanage a lot of stuff through idle orders, and later on idle tactics when we have more fields for those, eventually we'll also be using that command. But I usually don't. I usually leave it out for now. Why would it be called either of those? When you're telling the AI, when this flag is enabled, when you write AI control don't focus disabled, it tells the AI to not suicide its entire army into one locked down unit. That's all it's doing, is cutting out that AI control, that AI behavior from the vanilla game. You know when you'd get locked down and like half the map would run at you? That's basically what that ignores. Shared vision is fairly simple. This shares vision with a certain player. Obviously for this script we don't need it, but that's there because of this was sourced from a Hydra map. Help if trouble says, if I have any computer-controlled allies, they should try to defend me. This is really shitty behavior right now. Like, it's a good idea, but it doesn't usually work out in a great way right now. So, hopefully we get a fix to it and make it better. But right now, this is the best we can do. It basically results in just a few small units being sent over to help, usually, unless they're, like, really close. Idle orders, disable built-in, blah blah blah, is basically saying don't try to cast Psystorm or Lockdown or whatever from across the map. Don't try to cast certain abilities in dumb ways. This does not stop the retaliatory casts, and if you attack at a spellcaster like a queen, they will actively try to ensnare or broodling or whatever, depending on what they have researched. So this really is just so that if the unit is idle, they won't run around like a lunatic. Which is useful because it allows you to bank energy for actually useful things, like your own idle orders requests. This town state command is a script command, it's extended. This one basically just says, hey, if all of my buildings and units that are assigned to my town die, don't delete this town. This town is still important. So this is really important for mains. What else?
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
I don't think it's a double negative. Pretty sure nothing is negative about disabled. It would be a double negative if you wrote don't not focus disabled. I can see that as a double negative. I don't think that's... Don't focus disabled is not a double negative. Disabled is just a unit state. It's saying don't focus these units. That's all it's saying. So you have either focus disabled or don't focus disabled. So it's either do this or don't do that. Okay, so at the top of my AI script, before we get to all these multi-runs, I have a huge list of, well, it's not really a huge list, but it's a list of basically these things that I'm calling functions. So idle is just a generic like, hey, I want you to do nothing, but I still need to give you instructions so that you don't get deleted, basically. I guess with town persist now, this wouldn't be as necessary. But this is mostly just a safety. It's when you have an AI that's like a area town or an expansion or a main town that's finished requesting new things, you can go to an idle block and nothing bad will happen. Blank is fairly self-explanatory. It's just I jump here when I want a script to end, and I also use this for comparison commands where I'm reading or I'm waiting or modifying data instead of reading data. So bring, jump, and similar comparison commands. If you're reading data, you jump to the block that you put here. If you're waiting or you're writing new data, like you're adding resources or you're adding deaths, that stuff, the block name at that point is not something you need to worry about because it doesn't actually get used, but you still need to fill it in because of a limitation with PyAI, I believe. I guess eventually we'll have our own command where that won't matter, but well, right now that's how we have to deal with that. What's up, Patrick? Welcome. So that's what blank is. Init town is basically a block that I call to save on writing start town, wait 1, set free ID every single expansion. This is fairly straightforward stuff. The only reason why it's in its own function is because I kept writing it a lot for every single expansion, and I wanted to stop doing that. However, for this generic AI, there's not really any situation. It's not like I'm having him get to a specific natural, right? He's just going to use the default expand command, so I may end up coming back here and deleting that because I don't think it's going to be that necessary. I think there's only going to be one time where I would ever call this function in theory, at which point it's better to just take the code and put it into that one instance, basically inlining it even though it's a function. So, wait attack basically just tells the AI to wait for the following conditions to be true before trying to attack. I call this block every single time I'm making an attack force. Like before I start to make it, I check if they have 10 or more SCVs. I check if they have at least one factory, and I check if they have at least 200 resources. For this AI, I'll probably explore adding more information or more conditionals to this check, like are we currently being attacked, or something like that maybe. That also will depend on personality, I'm sure. It's like, do the AI even give a shit? Like, do they even call this at all? Maybe they are reckless and they want to throw away everything. But there's all sorts of different things that you could do with that, but that's what that function is. And then I have wait resource, which handles... it's basically a workaround for the AI's shitty request system, where if they have a decent amount of money, then they will ignore the resource-based requests, or like the resource limiting requests, where the AI will wait for enough resources to spend money on something. Basically what happens is that the AI gets a request, and if they can't immediately satisfy it, like they have a spire request and they have no lair, they'll just cycle through it. But if they have a spire and a lair, and they spire request and a lair, and they can satisfy the spire request, but they have to wait for money, they don't have enough money, then they wouldn't cycle through it and go to the next request. They would wait until they had enough money, and that would potentially stop them from requesting more important things at the time, like creep colonies or whatever. And you can't really fix this with priorities either, because if the spire request just comes first in the script, like is received first, it doesn't matter if the creep colonies are a higher priority. They're still being waited on. And so it's useful when the AI doesn't have that much money to wait for stuff like this. But if the AI has a bank at all, I always have them ignore that and don't wait, and basically treat a request that they don't have money for the same way they would treat a request that they don't have the tech requirements for. And so that's what this is. If they have less than 500 in this case of minerals, it's not gas respective at all. But right now that's the current breakpoint. I haven't really experimented with different breakpoints. I probably should. But in general, this block has improved performance of AI that were otherwise getting stuck a lot on like a specific request. So I would tend to rely a lot on this. It's a fairly straightforward thing. It just loops, and the 240 is like every 10 seconds it's checking the next thing. Wait defense is a 30-second wait, and then it's basically denying or subtracting 1 death off of group factories. This may end up being something where it's like a little bit different in the future. I may end up making multiple functions. One that clears factory deaths, and one that clears bunker deaths or defense structure deaths or building deaths in general. But the bottom line is the reason why I do this every 30 seconds is because I'm actually keeping track of how many factory deaths have happened in the recent history, like in recent map state. And if they've suffered a certain number of them within the recent map state, then they will expand slower. They will attack slower. They will try to do things that are riskier less often until it's reached 0 factory deaths, or until a certain amount of time has happened where they're not getting pushed back as hard. In theory, it's meant to approximate. Critical infrastructure is failing or is being destroyed. I'm trying to respond to this. So, in that situation, it's mostly this does nothing by itself, but I will reference group factories deaths and say, like, if it's at least 5, get to the point where you are like slow down attacks, slow down expansions, and maybe increase defense build requests or something. There's a bunch of different things there. So that's all of my functions and the headers. That's like the first steps, basically. Hopefully you're with me so far on this, Alexander. Now, beyond that, we have a set of multi-runs. Now, obviously, I'm multi-running the wait resource and wait defense. Like I said, I don't multi-run wait attack because I call that. So that's called from the actual attack thread, as opposed to anything else. I'm going to turn down this music a little bit. So, in the rest of these multi-runs are basically functions that normally, some of these would be handled differently. If we go over to the Magistrate AI, which is from Terran 01, obviously before I decided to make generic AI. We have this thing up here that basically creates a dummy thread, or a dummy town, and this town is actually what controls the pre-placed units. I don't have the luxury of picking a specific location to make sure that I cover everything in the map, and so I can't account for that in an AI that's meant to work no matter what the starting circumstances are, in theory. So because of that, I don't use that. However, what I do is I still call town state 255 persist true. And that means that the key difference here, and this is one of the reasons why the Magistrate script is more complicated, or the modern AI is more complicated than this generic Terran AI that I'm writing, is in the town, if I scroll down past all of this code, this is where all the base layouts are, right? And there's some more multi-runs and some more functions. But this is where it would get its town requirements, and it would also multi-run stuff like, a series of bunker requests that are that correspond to the base layouts. As you can see here, it's like load bunkers at specific coordinates and all that stuff. In this case, like this is what we would be working with in a series where we're like, eventually we will be working with this sort of thing when I'm adapting this basic AI into the individual maps after I've adapted it to individual personalities, obviously. So when I have a Magistrate personality, which is probably what this is going to be based off of anyway, the generic AI is going to be based off of that personality in some part, and I'll make some more broad strokes generalizations later. Eventually I will specify that, or specialize that into the Magistrate, and then specialize that further into this map, and we'll use these base layouts and these this build thread and all that stuff, right? And we'll request tech that we have access to in that mission and stuff like that. But the reason why this is a separate town is so that the town that persists doesn't have any building requests, so that the AI won't try to constantly be rebuilding their main base in their main region when they have no buildings over there. So imagine a game state where I run this AI that I'm giving you the lowdown for, right? I run it over the Magistrate down here. And then the Magistrate AI expands you know, say into the middle of the map, and then they lose their main. In the current script, because I don't have the luxury of being able to do that create script dummy area town thing that I was talking about, if they lose their main, their requests will persist. And I can't really do this any other way. I mean, I guess I could, in theory, do a second start town with all of the requests. I might experiment with that. But I'm pretty sure at that point you would still have... You'd have some weird shit where, like, the main command center was assigned to the town with no requests, and so they would build a second command center to satisfy the dummy town. That's why we can't do that, I'm pretty sure, but maybe I'll experiment with that anyway. Bottom line is, if this town were to be wiped out and we have town state 255 persist true running, in that situation, we don't have the basically the AI would constantly try to rebuild its shit over here because all the requests would still be there, even if the town was eviscerated and no longer intact. Even if there was like another AI, like say the Zerg expand down here and they take this base, they would still be trying to build stuff because the town never went away. So I guess on the flip side, what I could do is probably start a dummy town after the fact and use that dummy town to persist with all of the code. So maybe that's what I'll do instead. I'm actually not sure if I can just multi-run a start town. I'll ask Icor about that later. Anyway, that's why that's like a current drawback of this system that we're using for the generic AI that I'm still figuring out a solution to. And so that's why we multi-run T-Town. T-Town is the main. It's all the way down here. I'll scroll down. Eventually we'll find it. Oh, maybe oh yeah, it's right here. So as you can see, there's no base layouts. I missed it because it's so small. So all I'm doing is multi-running some basic ideas like the worker thread, and the transport should be down here as well. So these basically handle worker requests based on some conditionals. And otherwise we are multi-running our tech path. We're adding production if we have enough money, and we're adding bunkers if we have enough money. In this case, I might end up removing the bunker requests entirely or only adding like 2, because the odds of the AI placing reasonable bunkers and then staffing them reasonably, it's pretty low. So we probably won't rely too much on bunkers until we get like an algorithmic version of load bunkers or something. But maybe I'll probably end up keeping the code in there anyway, even if it is only 2, just because I'm going to use it as a framework for when I add base layouts for everything. And then obviously we add turrets after we have an engineering bay, and then we go to idle. Because all of the tech and all of the production structures are handled through these 2 blocks here, the add tech and add production. Main transport is similar to the main worker thread, based on certain conditions, including whether or not we're under attack. This block here is basically making sure that we are, like, it's waiting until are we under attack is false. And so when we're not under attack, this does nothing and you proceed right past it. If we are under attack, then you have to wait for this to be false instead of true. Then we have to wait for us to have a control tower, and we have to wait for us to have basically if you have 5 dropships or more, you're going to jump back up to the top as well. And so we have to wait until we have 4 or less dropships. And we also have to wait for money. So we have to wait until we have, in this case it's 300, even though that's more than the cost of the dropship. That's so that they don't spend their last money on a dropship, because it's probably not going to be that useful. In this case we're training. I probably should replace this with a queue. I'm pretty sure I did replace this with a queue in another block, or another AI, but I just haven't gone around to it. Similar to the SCV stuff over here. And so that's what these do. They're basically like town functions, core town functions. I usually like to keep the AI, give the AI a fair number of dropships, like 4 or 5 dropships, for the sake of providing them with enough for attacks and enough for just general town management. They do like dropships, generally speaking. So that's the town stuff. Obviously, that's a bit more complicated because we've multi-run and separated a bunch of stuff out into individual functions. So it's much more complicated than just requesting a linear set of, like a breakdown of a linear set of like command center, engineering bay, barracks, armory, whatever. You know, it's much more complex now. But once you understand that it is separated into those individual functions, you should be able to then look at that and say, oh, this is what this function does. Like you're still familiar with all the parts. It's just, or what they are when they're combined together. It's just harder to visualize them working in tandem because they're separated now. So that's certainly a drawback from a learning perspective of all of this stuff. Tmax is down here. I didn't give it the right title. But Tmax is basically just to find max values. Fairly straightforward stuff. I only have that separated so it doesn't clog up this main area over here. Otherwise, it just stops immediately afterwards. Tdef is a loop. The new way that I do defenses are done through this way, where we wait until every 30 seconds or immediately if we're under attack, we run the build threads. And these build threads for the, or we call the build functions, I should say. These build functions basically, in tandem with default min1, which, as I said earlier, makes the AI try to automate the defensive nature of the guard requests that I was doing before, where the AI will constantly pepper its base with a bunch of defending units. And specifically, they'll move units towards areas that are being expanded outwards into. And so the AI kind of automatically figures out what it needs. That behavior doesn't work if the AI has no defense build units, right? I mean, it does work if they have defense use, but it doesn't work if they don't have, like, they can't train new units to do that if they don't have defense build calls. And so that's deliberately restricted to every 30 seconds or if they're under attack by me, because I don't want them spending money on needless amounts of defenders, which is what they would do if they were left to this situation. And that would clog up the request list, and they would get nothing done. So every 30 seconds, we allow them to check their defense and see what they need. And then they queue up a bunch of stuff. And then after... This should probably be a little bit higher. This is 5 seconds. So we'll say 10 seconds instead. So after 10 seconds, we wait until the AI is no longer in combat, no longer under attack. And then we clear all of the commands, we loop back up, and we call the use command again, which, again, tells them to at least staff with the units that it has, but it's not going to tell them to build anything. And then, obviously, these are the individual functions for building stuff. The zealot thing up here, the at least one zealot death, is basically every time this def G build is called, if there's a zealot death, jump to def G build 2, otherwise add one zealot death so that the next time it's called, we jump to def G build 2. It's like an alternating pattern, basically. That's a fairly straightforward thing there. It's just set up in a silly way because this is what we have to work with. Further down, we've got upgrades, T up G over here. This is also fairly straightforward stuff. I have made it a lot of different functions because we're dealing with a lot of different upgrades. For example, I multi-ran, upgrade Eng 2, and this handles infantry armor, and also multi-runs up Eng 3, which handles infantry weapon. And then further down in the original thread, I multi-run up Eng 4, and that handles structure armor once we have an armory. And then, obviously, level tier 2 structure armor. The rest of it will handle sequester pods, which is missile turret range, and comsat mana, which is Odysseus reactor. So, that's like basic ideas there. And that's how I structured all of the threads for like anything that needed to wait for a tech requirement, or anything that required where it was probably going to receive multiple of the upgrade structure, like 2 engineering bays or 3 or 4 armories, for the sake of requesting a bunch of different things like ship plating, ship weapons, in a sequence rather than it being potentially delayed by virtue of the AI, like waiting for vehicle plating tier 1 to get ship weapons tier 2 or something like that. I don't even worry about that anymore. So that's basically, even though it's messier, it ends up being much more efficient on the AI side. We also have, what I like to do is when we get to the point where we're researching certain tech, we also are multi-running the idle orders, so I link the idle orders there. IL Comsat is... I think I used to run it at the top, and now I don't think it's run anywhere, but I can just multi-run it in here. Yeah, it wasn't multi-run anywhere. That's basically just how I have them handle shit like this. Spellcasting of Comsat, spellcasting of Irradiate. When we have the new optical flare, I'll handle the spellcasting for that. And when we have the optical or the observance ability from the science vessels that was talked about a week ago or so, I'll obviously add that for that. Lockdown will be requested in this AI because, of course, they will get ghosts eventually. I just haven't plugged in their stuff yet. And yeah, that's basically that. Fairly straightforward upgrades and spellcasting going hand in hand in this case because you get the spells for them to spellcast when you're doing the upgrading. So that's that setup. I think it's best to conceptualize all of this stuff as, like, even though they're all part of the same script, you're almost conceptualizing them as completely distinct functions. It's just that you also don't want to lose sight of how they impact the rest of the script. And so you don't want to get into a habit of, like, thinking that, oh yeah, the AI has all of these upgrade requests, and forgetting that at the same time that these are being requested, they may also have defense requests, attack requests, expansions, builds, stuff like that. And so a step that I may end up taking for the upgrades, for example, is actually adding in a call, basically, that checks for a certain amount of, if we scroll up here, for the weight defense stuff. So basically something like having a few different tiers of waiting for defense, and we'll say if they've got, you know, 2 or less factory deaths, then it doesn't matter. Like, the threshold is fairly high. They can have suffered that many factory deaths in the last 30 seconds or so. And, well, I guess it would be a last minute. But they can suffer that much, and it doesn't matter as much. We still return. Because, like, the threshold is low here. And then for medium, it could be that it has to be lower than that in order to immediately pass. Because blank return in this case, we're jumping there if we don't want to do any waiting at all. And otherwise, like, we'll wait 30 seconds. And then maybe here we wait for a minute. And then maybe here we wait for... I mean, I think 30 seconds is probably fine in general, regardless, because we're trying to check this stuff. And so... Oh, actually, we could just do it completely differently. We could do something like... every 5 seconds check this. And obviously when they have, you know... Hold on. Yeah, I like this system better anyway. So here what I've done is I've modified or augmented the weight defense stuff, right? And so I will call these blocks in various states. And so maybe upgrades are not the most important thing to conserve because as expensive as they are, they're fairly infrequent. And so if we were to call something like weight in between the upgrades, we could call it at the lower priority, where they're only that, you know, it doesn't matter if they've lost 3 factories recently. As long as it's not more than 3, we'll still go ahead with upgrades because they're fairly benign in terms of how much money they actually take up, usually speaking. And then maybe for the higher tier ones, we could call the medium to make sure that we're a little bit safer, or the high even, to make sure that we're being as safe as possible before investing in something so expensive. So this could be a system that we use there. And so in this case, we do something like call or defense low, right? So we can call wait defense low here. I mean, in this case, they're probably not going to have 3 factories by the time infantry armor gets requested, so odds of them doing that are pretty low. In this case, so, you know, it might be better to do something like this here. We'll say medium for these because those are not essential upgrades. Obviously, this also impacts readability of the script, but I don't think there's a way that you could automate this sort of call any more than calling it. So basically, the lower in terms of importance the upgrade is, or the tech is, the higher tier weight it receives. Which is a bit of an inverse correlation, and maybe I should clean that up. Alright, so we've done that. And that's fairly straightforward. This is a way for us to delay the acquisition of certain upgrades or the spending of any sort of nature. In this case, we've just implemented it for upgrades. But it's a way for us to delay in an organic manner that's based on a real world, like real map gameplay example of some sort of encapsulation of, like, if I'm under attack and I'm, you know, losing a lot of factories, I probably don't want to spend money on upgrades at that point. It's probably not sensible if I'm in a real-world situation as a player. And so we're kind of borrowing that sense-making and putting it into the AI in this case. Obviously, it's a very crude implementation right now, but in theory, it should work out just fine as it stands. So. Any confusion or questions so far? I'm going to jump into expansions after this. So let me know if you are all set. And that could be anybody, not just Alexander. Well, the thing is, there's tons of learning examples of more basic stuff. It's just that I don't know what the value of... I mean, if you don't fully have a grasp on what makes an AI in that sense, some of these functions only exist within a system as complex as this. like the waiting for certain things to happen, certain conditions before spending money, right? I haven't seen that in any other AI that I've written or otherwise. Any other kind of AI. I really started doing that when I was writing my inconsummate scripts. I started messing around with an idea like that. Whereas in older Hydra maps, obviously that didn't happen. Tech switches were handled through random chance, basically, or just getting to the late game. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever really waited for certain things like that. Maybe there were some odd situations where I would wait for, like I think in Vzergo 1, Scarlet would wait for Sienna to have tanks, or Sienna would request tanks after Scarlet took a position. Stuff like that would happen. But I don't think there was anything that was, like, organic based on resources or based on danger posed by the enemy or anything like that. So, stuff like that, functions are I think they're going to end up being pretty vital to feeling like to handling edge cases that are not so rare after all. But I can tell you how you would condense all of this stuff into a simpler environment, right? So if you wanted to remove any mention of the weight defense stuff, right, you delete all those, and you make all of the upgrades more of a sequential list. Upgrade jump, obviously, is just, in this case, we're just waiting for an upgrade to be completed before we request something else. In this case, it's medic mana, right? So we're waiting for medic mana to be completed, and then we wait 30 seconds before teching optical flare. This is kind of a fallacious example because med bays you're probably going to have more than one. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to operate under the assumption that you need to wait for one to be finished before you get the other thing. But I don't think that's too big of a deal in that case. A more obvious example would be the Academy. You're not going to build 2 Academies. So you get Marine Range, then we wait for Marine Range to finish, and then we tech Stim Packs. And when Stim Packs are finished and we have a Science Facility, we get a Polyoid Adhesive, which is the Firebed upgrade that gives them full damage to buildings. So, similar situation going on here. It's just that you wouldn't break yours up necessarily the same way that I did, or at all. You would just have, like, I think it's important to multi-run them in this situation, in this sense, like what I have selected. That's important because the player could build an engineering bay or an academy or something. They might build some of these out of the order that you're setting them up in. And so it's important to have the code sitting there waiting for a building to be completed. Like waiting until we have an engineering bay. Waiting until we have an armory or an academy or whatever. Before we get that code executed. As opposed to doing what I used to do, which is I used to do wait build 1 engineering bay. Wait build 1 academy. Like, what if they get the academy first? Or they're building the engineering bay and that gets destroyed by a harassment and they build the academy. Well, they're still waiting on, even though they could get Marine Range and Stim Pack, they're waiting for an engineering bay to be finished, so that delays things. Like, I didn't really think that through when I was doing that. So you should still multi-run yours into separate threads, which might seem a little imposing at first. But once you've got them done, you can pretty much just copy and paste them and then change the timings around like I do between scripts of the same race anyway. So that would be how you would condense the upgrades, obviously not worrying too much about the timing. If you don't want to worry about idle orders, I suppose you don't have to. That can be something that you should probably experiment with and see how it feels. See what it's like when you put stuff in. Tons of learning examples where you can deconstruct individual things off of the scripts that are out there. What else? In the town thread, instead of multi-running stuff like I think you should multi-run the worker stuff, because my worker thread, well, DF made the worker thread up and sent it to me. The one that is in my scripts, we stand by that one. That one's really, really solid. Always works. I guess the one drawback is if your AI doesn't have that much money, they will still spend the last 50 minerals they have on an SCV, in theory, even if they're under attack or whatever. So there probably needs to be some case for that, where if they're below like 300 resources or something, then maybe they like, I guess it could be something like it would be like at most call or 299. Weight defense low. Something like that. I guess we can make it medium for the lower priority ones. Sure. Yeah, no problem. I'll just finish up talking about the condensing of this stuff and the expansions. This will give me the opportunity to finish culling all of the map-specific stuff as well. No problem. Okay. So for main town condensing, I would still multi-run the main worker, like I said. Transport as well, optional if you feel like they should always stack some transports in the back, assuming they have enough money. And of course, you can control the transport stuff or the resource threshold for that. Like over here, you could make it higher if you wanted to before they request that stuff, just to make sure that they have enough money in the back to do whatever else they need to do. And then you'd take a look at what else do we got here? Just the build thread, right? So instead of multi-running the tech thread, tech path, you could multi-run a separate thread that would just do like only tech structures, or multi-run a separate thread that only does production structures if you wanted to keep things a little bit neater and make things more efficient, similar to how I multi-run the upgrades into different threads. That's something you could do. Otherwise, I would just say you can throw it all into the same thing. Obviously, explicit refinery requests if you're building, if you have AI control, don't build gas up at the top. And for defense, maybe it's easier for you to multi-run just a defense thread instead of mixing it in with everything else, so that way you request bunkers and turrets or colonies or cannons. I used to do pylons and cannons in one thread, and then production structures and tech structures in the main town thread that's in here, and then the other thread would be like, oh yeah, that's where I have my pylons and cannons. And the idea was that I'll request the pylons and the cannons based on money or whatever as time goes on, and then I'll wait until I have a pylon at a certain location before requesting a certain gateway or something like that. Or like wait, build 4 pylon, then build 2 gateway, and that would be in the main thread, even though build 4 pylon would be in another thread. Stuff like that. That's if you want to, again, like set up certain things to make sure that the defenses are in their own area, easier to keep track of without having to keep them in the main thread all stuck together. So that's probably how I would condense it, is again keeping these 2 multi-runs at the top, and then I would say at least one multi-run, either defense, tech, production, putting one of those things in their own area so that your main thread is a little bit less cluttered, and using local jump or wait build or whatever as ways to wait before requesting certain things. Otherwise, after that, you just go to idle. And then, of course, here's the headers, or functions, rather. And then there's expansions. So expansions were the second to last thing called at the very top of the script. Expansions, for me, I always have an initial thread that waits until the AI has. In this case, it's 50 more minerals than the town hall it requires. That's always the case. So for Zerg, it would be 349. In this case, it's 449 because it's Terran. Then I add a death for a unit that they don't use otherwise, and this death is used for timing. So in the attack thread, I will often wait until this death is at least 1 or 2 or whatever, and then I'll, like, an example would be if an AI is fast expanding, they will always get the expansion death added first. The attack thread will wait until that death has triggered before before going at the attack, right? So wait for that death and then wait maybe a minute and then attack. And then if it's vice versa and they are going to attack before they expand, then they'd get their attack. After the attack has been started, they would add the death there, and then instead of death 13, add 1 Hierophant. It would be at least wait 1 Hierophant, and you would see the AI waiting in that case. This is just a way to synchronize the expansion timing with the rest of the script. Another thing that we can do as well is in the main town thread, when you're requesting tech or production structures or something, you can also add a wait for the death there, so that the AI doesn't spend that 449 minerals it has on extra barracks or something like that. You know, you can wait and build 2 barracks, and then before you build their third, wait until this death has been triggered, and then wait like an extra 30 seconds or something for safety's sake. This death basically tells the AI, I have enough money to expand. It doesn't tell the AI to expand, because that happens later on in the EXP loop function. But this death is basically signifying to the AI that I have enough money to expand, which means in short order, probably around 30 seconds at the absolute maximum, I should have already attempted to expand at the very least. And that's basically what that boils down to. So that's fairly straightforward stuff. Then we call AI control build gas, because we're not going to expressly tell the AI to build refineries at specific breakpoints in its script anymore. So we can just have them automatically do that for us and not worry about it. Obviously, if you want to tell the AI to build refineries at specific locations or at specific times in their expansion threads, you can. And then down here in EXP loop, we call the defense wait again. Obviously, you wouldn't do that if you're trying to make it simple. And then we have a second check for the resources, and then we expand. This redundant check is because we're going to be looping in this function forever. If you wanted to bypass this redundant check a second time, in case in the 12 frames since this first check passed, they spent money, you would just put the expand command up here before you jump into this thread, and then you'd also have like a duplicating the wait as well, so that it doesn't try to double expand with the money that it has. And yeah, so expand is obviously fairly simple by itself. You're expanding a certain amount of times using the code in a certain block, and in this case it's an EXP. I'm going to change that to EXP around town, because that's what's down here, and we're going to cut out all these layouts. And then we just have this. And then this loops. This is a little bit over 5 minutes. So if you wanted the AI to expand more than once every 5 minutes, then obviously you would shrink that. And if you wanted to take longer, you'd increase it. In fact, that might be almost 6. I don't remember. Oh, it's 6.6. So yeah. We'll make it a little bit cleaner. Yeah. There you go. That's exactly 6 minutes. Now, further down here, we have the expansion town thread. This would be very similar to your main town thread, except in theory, you don't have to worry too much about requesting as many things, because it's an expansion. Obviously, if you're kowtowing or curtailing this code to a specific base, say, again, we're in the magistrate's base, and we tell him to expand here, and we know he has a lot of build space and a lot of resources in this area, so we want to make him use that. In that case, we would need to set it up a little bit differently so that it was handling specific expansion code. And that's where, if we go back over here, right, we have all of these jumps. So this would allow you to jump to, say, if this was resource area, let's see what resource area it is. So it's resource area 12 right now. So we would say, like, at least 12. Instead of at least call, it would be at least 12 or 1. And then it would jump to a different block that would give it base layouts and specific commands. We're not doing that for this case, but that's how you would do that if you wanted to. Or one way you could do it. I'd usually do it a different way. And then, yeah, build command center, EXP worker, wait, build 1 command center, add turret, add bunker, wait, build 10 SCVs, or wait until it starts building the 10th SCV, and then start adding production. So this would be like extra barracks or whatever. And then go to idle. For EXP worker, we have this very similar setup to the main worker. One key difference is that at first you're getting explicit build requests for the SCVs. This is because the AI doesn't have a command center yet, because it's building it. So we build the SCV, we wait until they've started building the command center, we build a second SCV. This is just, usually this is satisfied from another town, like the main town or an adjacent expansion. And this is also so that we can add a second, or like add a missile turret or something, or a bunker, whatever, before the command center is finished. If we wanted to do that, we would assign a second worker there. And then we do max workers 18, get old peon 6. Get old peons tells the AI to transfer workers if they're available. And then go to EXP worker STD, which is for standard, not sexually transmitted disease. And then, yeah, down here. This is very similar to the other one, right? So that's basically that. We can do a similar thing that we did before. And we can do medium down here. And there you go. It's just layouts. We don't need to worry about that. This is my add tech thing. Tells the AI to build certain things. These W production structure or W structure are basically waiting for the resource requirements and the tech requirements. Eventually, we'll have an updated build command that will take into account resource and tech requirements as flags if you want them to. And so once we have that, we won't need any of these at all. Instead of player need and call, we'll just have one command that handles all that stuff. Pretty useful. But we don't have that yet, so we have to keep that there. Add bunker. If they have a bunker, you know, do your thing. I'm actually going to condense these checks later on, but fairly straightforward stuff in theory. Obviously, you would just explicitly request them instead of using add build if you wanted to make things simpler, and you wouldn't bother with any of the add things like add build or add prod or add tech. You would just go in here and write it in manually into the main town thread or into the expansion town thread as it goes, depending on what you're doing. At some point, I do have to get rid of a lot of these. Condense them down to the basic idea. And then this is attacks. So if we go back up here, this is the scaling thread. And so basically what I have here is we wait until we have 2 barracks, 10 more seconds, and then we wait, then we add a Hierophant death, and then we wait for 2 Hierophant deaths. And so this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the expansion deaths. We attack first, and then we wait for the breakpoint to be met, and then we wait again, maybe another 30 seconds, just so that we have insurance that we've successfully expanded. And then here, once we're at past 12 minutes, we jump to loop B, which basically just reduces the time between attacks. And otherwise, things are fairly standard in that sense. Some random jumps in here to maybe they'll maybe make it 1 in 3 chance to make it even faster in terms of how the attack goes. Fairly basic stuff in that sense. I'll probably augment this to be a little bit more complicated so that I can call harassment attacks instead of just straight up assault attacks in the future, depending on certain conditions. And obviously, somewhere within the attack gen or attack prep stuff, there should be some system that handles not only waiting attacks, but some other stuff. Like maybe in the wait attack thread, I would do something like call wait defense need, right? But because that could potentially go on for a while, I wouldn't want to do that inside another call. I would want to do that before anything is called at all. So that would basically be probably right here, before they start adding units to the attacks. And then we can have something fairly straightforward. So. But yeah, instead of using attack add relative, you could just use straight up attack adds in a sequential manner, similar to how I described the build threads or whatever in that sense. So you could just come up here in the scale area, which is meant to be scaling up until the final attack setup. That's what that is all about. That's why it's called scale. we would then, instead of calling add mix, target select, and attack prep, you would write out like attack add for Marine, attack add 1 medic, attack add 69 siege tank, attack prepare, attack do, attack clear. And you would do that for every attack that you wanted to do in a order, and then you'd loop a set of higher value, more extreme attacks that would handle stuff in the early stages. So there you go. Hopefully that's useful when you watch the VOD. I got sprayed with water. That's what happens when you're taking a drink and you put your you like shove your cup down a little too fast, you know what I'm saying? And we're just sent in the fix for medics, apparently. So let's take a look at that. All right. Well, up next we have to probably tear apart our ad stuff. So I think I don't want to get rid of the ad barracks checks entirely. I think the default idea is fine. But what I do also think is instead of doing it based on res area IDs, which is what I was using for, like, I've set up 5 base layouts for shit over here or whatever, you know. So I got to keep track of that somehow. Instead of that, I think we would do res area jump. At least, you know, if there's like 3,000 or more ore in the well, maybe it would be like 9,000 would be max, and then like 5,000 would be medium, and otherwise you'd get like the bare minimum or something. So we would say, or 9,000 add barracks max. And then we also have to figure out where where everything fits into the situation as well. So in this case, we're looking at, I would say, like, probably 7 barracks with 3 med bays, and then otherwise we would say like 5 barracks. We'll do 8 barracks. 8, 5, 2 med bays. That's fine. And then otherwise you get 2 barracks with 1 med bay. I mean, again, this is like assuming the AI is going for a marine-focused build, right? So that's where I'm like on the fence. Like, do I do that? But at the same time, you know, maybe instead of multi-running add prod, there's a chance to specifically call add barracks, add factory, or add starport, depending on what your composition is. And then maybe there could be some further specialization based on that. So I am trying to think of like how I'm going to handle specializing the AI in that way. It's like, I guess if we don't really have a good way to detect like the biggest threat in theory, like I guess you could just do a flat map hack check of like who has the most value in terms of units. And if that's the case, then like I don't know. I guess it should be based on what the AI has in terms of the map data. Like what is the AI scouted? Hey DF, are you still kicking? Still kicking it old school? Yeah. Have you considered making north-facing versions of all of the cliff doodads? So that we have more cliff tile variety for the north-facing stuff? I figure ramps... I mean, not ramps, the caverns or whatever, the cave entrances would probably be the easiest ones to do to visibly look different. What's up, Iceware? Yeah, I just compiled it, actually. I guess the installations and the temples or whatever would be pretty difficult to see, but I was always wondered about that. Basically, like, similar to the structure ones, how they have reverse stuff. I always thought that would be neat. But I don't know if they would look any good. If you change buildings built by your SCV, old IDs would be required to unlock advanced buildings. I don't understand. Oh, like, so when the buttons themselves appear, they disappear if you disable all Terran advanced buildings or something. Is that what you mean? No, I'm not talking about the other ramps. These ones. I'm talking about the doodads. Like the installation, the caves. Because, structure has these north-facing ones over here. So basically making versions of those for all of the different cliff doodad types across the all tile sets. Not an easy ask. I'm just saying, have you considered it? Right, standard buildings are command center, spy depot. So if you disable all of those for a player, then the build basic Terran construction button doesn't appear because of hardcode. That's pretty insane. Right, yeah. That's nuts. Well, would they though, DF? I feel like they'd be pretty distinct from what you see here. Yeah. At least the caves, I think, would be noticeable. Well, like where I think it should work logically, where it fetches a list of what that particular command card has on it, and if no connected units are enabled, to disable the button. So if you can do that, that would be great. If you can set that up and then have a config option that uses that function instead of whatever the old hard-coded bullshit is, that would probably do the trick. But I don't know how easy that is.
Upgrade complete.
Finally. Fire's out. Naturally. Fire's out. Want to turn a bead. Go straight for this.
Did someone page me?
Alright, it's working. Yes, you have to finish Graftquare. What is Graftquare's state anyway? How's it doing? Okay, bye. I'm just asking you, when can I stop using shitty Firegraft? That's what I want to know. I feel like I've looked at that before and it's always shit. I think I was going to use one of these and try to recolor it at some point, but It looks like this lost a lot of shit, honestly. Oh. Finally sorted all those palette-wise. Ah, what's up, Alexander? Well, you can rewind exactly 30 minutes if you like. Water splash trails is I don't know what you're talking about. I was not looking at chat during that. Talking about these? What are you talking about? These. Oh yeah. Who would have guessed? Yeah, I guess. Anyway, these are in the Impact of Power folder. You should be able to find them somewhere. Might be able to use this as a read. I don't know how big it is, though. Try to make it nice and quick. Flashy. Will it work in O-Fire? No, definitely not. Oh, well, I can zip them and send them to you. I just cataloged them all, so. The only question is, how am I going to, what could I possibly replace at this point that I haven't already replaced? PBL Glow. Oh yeah, I guess I don't use T, me, heal, M. Use that. It looks like I might use it, though. It's already remapped to blue. Unless it was always blue. Oops. Hell yeah, brother. Pizza, indeed. One thing I would like is a way to, like, have a single effect or a single overlay effect similar to hallucination that almost like a flash effect or something to show a certain, like, have a different colors that would show different effects expiring. I feel like that would be useful as like a placeholder at the very least, but unfortunately I don't think the functionality for that exists. What? All right. Hopefully that works out. Are you volunteering to fix all of the bugs? Because, I mean, the biggest issue was that we kept crashing and shit. Crashing, freezing. I can shoulder the responsibility for the freezing. Although at some point you did talk about making it so that AI would print the last command in the AI script entry and maybe the script position or something. If the freeze was happening, and then stop executing in that thread. So we could track down AI script freezes better. I'm not sure if you still intend to do that.
Upgrade complete.
I hear that. Want to turn up the heat? Let's burn.
Doesn't seem to play the death animation.
I hear that.
Or again.
Commander, outstanding. Finally.
Also, doesn't even seem like the graphic is being indexed correctly or something. Something's fucked up on the graphics side of things. Animation's also too fast, so I'll fix that. Well, while you do that, I'll use the bathroom. BRB. we're back. All right. Got an iCore fix.
Upgrade
Where does it
complete.
hurt?
Ghost report.
Need medical
I'm
attention?
here. Yes. Naturally. I'm here. Yes. Let's burn. Finally. Want to turn up the heat. Finally. Fire it up. Slamming.
It's supposed to be like 2 seconds, not whatever the fuck that was.
Slamming. Naturally. Yes. I'm here. You got my attention.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe I have the wrong documentation. Oh, it's 10 seconds. Holy shit. Yeah, that's gotta be nerfed. Holy fuck. Yeah, I just fixed that. Alright, just fixed that. Clarified some aspect of it as well. Yeah, there's no read for it falling off still, but at least it reapplies the read there. I'm also thinking... at this point. I apparently have the wrong highlighting for it or whatever. I guess it was supposed to be Bexpol. After this, we'll go back to AI. Is there no debugging in iScript? There's no debug, like print message or whatever in iScript? Yeah, people just don't realize how powerful they are, I think. I mean, at the same time, they do heal fairly slowly, is another consideration. It's like the tick rate is fairly slow. Maybe it should be faster, so that, like a little bit, but I also don't think that's necessary either, necessarily. I think that the biggest issue is that they're a bit more micro and positional intensive, so... I'll mess around with them next time I play. Give me some good real experience with them. I think for wireframes we can add new wireframes and they're used for new IDs. So I don't I would think that that's also true there. What I can do is I can mess around with that before I go back to writing my AI, and we'll see what happens. CMD buttons. I thought I already may have done that, but I guess not. Good old Ahmed. Had a few Ahmeds here. Yeah, I will in a sec. It's just I have to add the new images down, and I may as well add the CMD buttons. See if they show up in Firegraft. I mean, they show up in Firegraft, but we'll find out if they're real or not. Oh, I don't remember what how Titan reactor was before this. It seems to show up, so it looks like we have an arbitrary number, or maybe it's really high or something.
Need medical attention?
Upgrade complete.
Want to turn up the heat? You got my attention.
Overlay detected. Remove overlay.
Naturally.
So we have 2.
Set us loose.
Azazel is a femoid, apparently.
Finally. Yes. Let's burn. Ghost reporting. I hear that.
So yeah, DF, it looks like the icons are real if you want to start adding extra ones. So maybe that just means that the iScript commands that I used are shit and don't work for some reason. Like the temp remove graphic end isn't called or something.
Unit awaiting input. Command archive.
Need medical attention?
System is hibernating.
Ooh.
Movement in
Ooh.
progress.
That looks pretty cool.
Command archive.
Need medical attention?
I'm here.
Where does it hurt?
Direct unit.
Standing by. Ghost reporting.
Direct unit.
I like it. Obviously, once we get the... What do you mean? Temp remove graphic end? It doesn't remove the image. It sets it to visible. Temp remove graphic start sets it to invisible. Like this sets it to invisible, then it idles, and then if you call its death manually, it should set it to visible. Is what I'm thinking. But I could import a blank image in theory, like a blank frame perhaps. But... Oh. Or you can just add a new function like you did. Hold on. Let me see what's up here. What did I just call? Oh, FC Sprite. .h. And then I have C Sprite dot CPP. Now we're gonna need at least double that. I wish there was that many number of units possible to be on the map and number of units possible to be in units.dat. That would be great. Excuse me.
Where does it hurt?
Call the shot.
Upgrade complete.
I'm gone.
No, there's no difference.
Standing by, Commander.
Ghost reporting. I'm all over it.
Oh.
Where do our enemies?
Ah! Why is it massive? That needs to be changed. I will not allow that to happen. Ridiculous. Hold on, let me see what I got here. Well, we'll have to change the ice script type, but I don't think that will have any negative effects per se. All right, try using G&D attack init, and we'll do that. Why do you do this to me?
Upgrade complete.
Still nothing. I'm gonna try something on my end. Wait, what? What did I just see? What's up, Luciferius? Yeah, I can't wait for that day either. It's gonna be epic.
Upgrade complete.
got my attention. I'm here.
All right, so it's not a temp remove graphic error issue, because it gets culled anyway. That's what I was checking. I wanted to see if that was the cause. So that's not it. Something else is removing it immediately. Monster Energy. I feel like you're spending so little, like so much money for such little caffeine. There's only like, I don't remember if those small cans, the 12 ounces or whatever, do those even have like, I think they're like 140 milligrams of caffeine or something. It's a lot of money for little baby. Little baby amount. At the same time, I do think that if you just drink something that you know has some caffeine in it, the fact that you're drinking, even if it's like a 12-ounce can or something, and it's not that much caffeine, it still has like a psychological effect of like, oh, I'm having caffeine now. Like, I think that probably facilitates something. There's something that goes in there. Oh, I see what you're saying. Since, like, can we hard code it, basically? What would... Is this in frames? So 2 seconds would be 48. I think your plugin is removing it before it even has the chance to play its animation. I'll try making it smaller. See if that has any effect.
Upgrade complete.
Yeah, see? It's about to do it. It's definitely the plugin removing it too fast. I want the animation start. I want it to start, like, as soon as the effect begins. Because it flashes, it's a flash in the pan effect. It doesn't happen for very long. I would prefer that the animation flashes, and the second you see, like, the exact point you see the flash is when the armor is gone. So you know, like, oh, that's a read. As opposed to it being too far ahead of the curve there. So I don't want it to... I don't want to have to work around that by making the effect play, the fall-off effect play before the fall-off actually happens, if that makes any sense. But that seems like the only thing we can do with the current setup. So hopefully this works whenever the next attempt is. Trying to think of what's next over here. Now that I think about the whole check for barracks and stuff, instead of worrying about that based on that, I think it should be based on build space. But I don't know how. There's no way that we could possibly check build space, so I guess we'll just use this for now. Alright. That's good there. Okay. What's up, Bailithal? Good morning to you. Yeah, I put in like a message where he would reply to whoever put in the or implemented the command, but it looks like it's breaking on the first conditional there. I could put in more debug messages on my end to see what happens. Oh, it looks like he actually broke. Message member roles add is not a function. Maybe that's why he broke. Maybe that gives you some idea of what's happening. Looks like the function you were trying to use to add was breaking. So that's one of the reasons why it never went anywhere. Work with us, Todd. Come on. Hey, it works. Epic.
You got it. Let's murder.
All right. I should probably untick draw if cloaked on that though in images.jet, just so that you don't get pranked by. It's a little visually noisy effect, but it's okay. That way we don't get situations where the read shows up and... Oh, do reads even spawn? Hold on, maybe I don't need to do that. So my concern is that if like enemies will see the overlay even on cloaked units, but I don't actually know if that's true. I think only the player in question has access to them, so I don't know. Oh yeah, there you go.
Systems hibernating. Unit responding.
Standing by. Outstanding. Rock and roll. Go, go, go. Let's move. Outstanding. Rock and roll. Go, go, go.
Unit awaiting input. Order accepted.
Commander. Outstanding. Finally. Call the shot.
What is the... Oh, okay.
Grant me your will.
Okay. X1, There we go.
Finally.
State the nature of your medical
Never know
emergency.
what hit him. I'm gone. I'm all over it. Never know
They got a lot of drugs, man.
I'm all over it. I'm gone.
State the nature of your medical emergency. On my way. Right away. I'm on the job. Stat. I'm on the
I can't heal him, and he doesn't have the upgrade, so I don't know how I'm supposed to test it with him. But that'll require a multiplayer test.
Direct unit.
I'm here.
Your forces are under attack.
Oh. The fuck? Is that a plugin crash, Iquare? Guess we'll have to take a look. I don't know what the fuck happened there. Something attacked something else. Very vague. Yeah, that takes a long time to do. It was a plugin crash? Okay. Well, I'll try to recreate it then. Remember when killing any building was crashing? That was a while ago. That was pretty psychotic.
Ghost reporting. Never know what hit him. I'm all over it. I hear that.
Oh wait, I'm supposed to attach Ollie. Oh. Yeah, I don't have any idea what caused it, unfortunately.
I'm gone. I'm all over it. I hear that. Standing by. Receiving headquarters.
The fuck? Oh. Because Radiate's supposed to be researched by default. Oops. I made an oops.
Moving. What do you want?
Systems hibernating. Unit command. Archive.
Standing by, Commander.
What? Why would killing Alexei Stukov crash the game? This guy's not supposed to be in here. Get him out of here. Oh, hold on. Let me hold the phone. I haven't even implemented the new one yet, so give me a sec. You typoed, destroyed. Try now. Anyway, I found this plugin crash. What do I do? Magnify. I think you broke him. Oh, never mind. Wait, what? Are you supposed to have a space between those? Here, I DM'd you a screenshot, Iquare, so you don't have to squint at YouTube. Scroll down. In this? It's a big ass function, whatever this is. I'll copy it and paste bin it. Oh, I see. So it doesn't work with spaces. No problem. What a weird crash. Kill Alexei Stukov and crash the game. I wonder if it's because of something I did, but I don't think so. Take a look. Units.dat real quick. He just uses the regular old ghost graphic. There's nothing in particular associated with him. I don't know. Oh, I see. That makes sense. Well, can you make it look for Modstream ping with a space in front of it instead of just Modstream ping? Would that fix it? And it's kind of a dumb solution, I guess, but... I'm gonna go break for lunch, but I'm still coming back here to finish my AI or get more work done on my AI. And hopefully confirm that this crash is fixed. So I will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello. And it looks like iQuire also fixed that crash. Epic. See ya, nerd. Good thing we found that before a fraud night or a test. Alright, hopefully that fixes that. From Todd. We've done so much. That would be pretty epic if that happened, to be honest. All right. Lunch over. Delicious. Okay. Taken care of. Oh yeah, I forgot I was supposed to be doing Zerg AI according to the thumbnail and title combo, but instead I've been working on Terran AI, so... No, the Terrans do not build a billion systems, unfortunately. Maybe that'll be the next stream. Oops. We did implement adrenaline packs, including a read for it, and we implemented a pretty good amount of this AI, or we did a pretty good amount of this AI. And we upgraded Todd, so I think that was a pretty productive set of circumstances. So... Somebody popped into the locker room and then popped right out, I think. At least I can't check because Ripcord doesn't give me an updated list of the members. In permanent disrepair. What else am I doing? Am I doing anything else? What else does this say I need? I actually think this AI should work fine right now. I need to expand its tech and upgrades to cover the maximum number of possibilities. And obviously it would be nice to have them set up with different like tech paths, different personalities within like different build orders, I guess. So that you could run 3 of the same script or something and have them all do distinct things. I don't like it that the idea that it would be random though. I feel like instead of it being random, it should be like, I guess, well, we could do this. Probably throw August Red's Revenge down in the bottom. Do that. Should be good there. Yeah, I mean, I think we're good, honestly. I don't see anything that would prevent this AI from working, but there's tons of small cases that may need to be adjusted. And like I said, I would like to have some variance in terms of the build threads. Pretty sure there was a crash on here when I was playing this in multiplayer. I want to see if I can recreate that one. Yeah. Let's see if I can't figure that one out. The fuck? Hello? I had like a partial power outage or something on one monitor. It was weird.